All right, we are live. What's going on, everybody? Happy Happy Friday. Week went by pretty quick for me. I don't know about you guys, but it went by pretty quick. Um, let's see. Okay. So last week, I think we recorded a little while ago. Last week, um, we were talking about what were we talking about? Kind of like a preview on free agency and some potential targets that that I kind of had in mind. Let's adjust this here. Um, and just kind of like going over key dates, how that impacts decision making. And as of today, we're at March 6th. Um, we've got about 4 days, just as a reminder. On the 10th, we've got um, restricted free agency. You can start to put your tenders on your restricted free agents. What's up, Derek, dude? Thanks for joining. Um, I appreciate it, man. We're getting closer, right, dude? Like free agency is right around the corner. Um, Restricted free agents by the 10th, we can start placing our tags or our tenders rather on the restricted guys. So Hollister, I expect him to get like a second round tender. That's going to cost you about $2 million, which is fine, right? Between him, Olsen, we got that news last week as well, and a healthy Disley, tight ends are going to be great. Um, let's see what else was going down. And then the other key dates were the 16th, 10 days from now, is legal tampering. You've got 2 days to negotiate. And then on the 18th, that's when free agency officially begins. So things are rapidly approaching. We had the combine. Obviously, that was the big thing. That was a big thing that went down. Depending on who you are, if you're a draftnik, you love it. If you're not, everything else is like everything else is or the combine is just like silly, right? So um, it is kind of silly in a sense because it is for TV, and we'll get into that. I wanted to go into depth about like what I thought about the combine, what I generally think of, just like the drills that they do there. Derek, you said, are they waiting until the new league year to cut Dixon? No, I don't think so. I think that'll happen in the next coming weeks, dude. Um, I'm still thinking um, he's out. I think they with signing Olsen, that's your second tier guy. You spent $7 million on him. Um, they're just waiting to probably. There's not really any reason to rush it, but yeah, I fully expect him to be gone here in the next couple weeks. Okay, so we'll get into a few things. There was also the rumor or nugget rather from Tony Pauline. I can't remember where he's at right now. It's not the Draft Network, but maybe it's Pro Football Network. He was talking about how Seattle could be interested in Yannick, trading for Yannick, and even had the details, which I thought was pretty interesting. He said trading their first 27 um, and then potentially like swapping their second round pick. So going from the back or whatever, one of their second round picks, and then moving up with Jacksonville the early second round. That's pretty interesting to me. So we'll get into that, but I guess we can start there because much has been made about like, are we really going after Clowney or are we going after Yannick? Is or can we potentially get both? I kind of sort of was like way off on it before. I'm still off on it, but I do think it's worth mentioning. There is a scenario where I think they could pull that off. The reason why I think it's super doubtful still is because of the fat that you got to cut off. And I know fans are going to just say, like, do it. Just do it. We need pass rush. We got to fix it. Um, because the names are Justin Britt, KJ Wright, DJ Fluker. who am I missing here? Let me bring up OTC. Those are the big ones that are. Those are the big ones that you can save a lot of money on. I know I'm missing another one here. What's the other one? Wright, Britt, Fluker, Dixon, Ed Dixon. Duh, we were just talking about it, Derek. Those are your four. So, as it stands, I would say for sure Dixon's going to be out. Pseudo, what's up, dude? Appreciate you joining, man. I really do appreciate you guys joining the live stream. This is really cool. We're gonna be adding this to YouTube. If you guys want to, if you can't ever join the live stream because everybody's busy, right? Or you're not always on Twitch, follow me on YouTube. YouTube for just getting. I'll be posting this raw video on my YouTube channel. Just search my name. It's not Cyoplasm like Twitter and everywhere else or here. Just search my name. And then I'll be putting those up after I stream these. So thanks for joining. As you can see, I'm kind of bouncing all over the place because this is just like a stream of consciousness, man. But I do really appreciate you guys coming on. We're going to talk a lot. So what was I saying? Okay, to make both Clowney and Yannick happen, you've got to create more cap space. Seahawks are at, after the Greg Olsen signing, you're at about 43 million or so, and it's not really 43 because you gotta reserve money. You've got to reserve money for rookies, and that's about $5 to $6 million. That takes you down to about 38 million in free spend. Then you need a rainy day fund, an emergency fund for in-season acquisitions. There will be injuries. Every year there are injuries. So you can't just say, we have this money, let's spend it all in free agency and let's just go after it because we're in this window and we need to fix stuff. We've got the money, spend it. I get it, but, and I know not every person is like, thinking about the cap as deeply as like the over the cap guys or some of the like Evan or Davis or some of the guys in Seahawks Twitter who really know cap. You're not thinking about it in depth like they are. So like the other part of it is what I was trying to say originally was you need about $5 million of like a rainy day fund, right? So when you lose an offensive lineman, you can go out and get $1 million vet that's been training, staying healthy, or whatever it is. A running back. We had 2 guys fall out last year randomly, and we needed to go get Marshawn. You need a rainy day fund. So what looks like $43 million of cap space after you accrue, take $5 million or so for a rainy day fund and the $6 million or so for the rookie reserves, you chop about $10 million off what their cap space is right now. Per over the cap, they are at 44 million. Yep, 44.6 million in free space. That's really true free spend is about 34 million. So when you talk about doing a Jadeveon Clowney who's going to cost you 18 to just above $20 million, and then in addition to that, getting a Yannick who's going to want the same money, you can't do both. You've got to cut guys, and then when you cut guys, you're creating more voids to fill, right? As I mentioned in the previous weeks. So your big money cuts, like we said, are going to be Justin Britt, and I get it. People think you can replace that guy. It's not. It's easier said than done. Trust me. Justin Britt is a valuable guy, and even though he's not a Pro Bowl center, you cannot find a cheaper. You're not going to find a cheaper option, replacement level starting center. It's just not there. If you look in free agency, you look in this draft, like here are my centers. Here are my centers right here. Most guys don't even have this Baez guy. I've got first rounders highlighted in blue. And then day two guys are marked in red. The yellows are, I'm just working on some like fringe day two, early day three guys. No need to pay mine at that, but there's just not really a replacement level for Justin Britt. So the best you can do with Britt is approach him and say, hey, can we restructure your deal? That's the only way you're going to save money on Justin Britt. You want him here. Joey Hunt's a restricted free agent, but he got killed. And yeah, it would be nice if Ethan Posick they stuck him at center and kept him there, and he was the incumbent center after Justin Britt's gone. That is still a possibility, but it seems like he's kind of for the moment stuck himself at guard. For now, he's your backup center though, so you've got to think of him like that. KJ Wright. So I've been pivoting back and forth with KJ Wright. He is due to make, I believe, $10 million. Right on the money. Yeah, right on the button. $10 million. If you cut him, you eat $2.5 million in dead money, but you save 7.5. So I've been tossing this back and forth. Like, I would love to have KJ Wright around. I think he's one of the most respected guys in the building. One of the most important veteran presences in the locker room. He's really valuable in that, and I don't think he had as bad a year as some people think. But I think going forward, Seattle really wants to put young guys on the field. And in my opinion, and some of the opinions of some of the X's and O's guys that I've been talking to, Cody Barton really is out of position at Sam. He needs to be in the will linebacker position where KJ Wright's at. And when they drafted him, he really was thought to be KJ Wright's replacement because KJ Wright was a free agent. He was on the market for a while, guys. I don't know if you remember that, but he was on the market for a while. He went and tested. The market wasn't what he thought it was. We got him back for the deal that he's on now, which is, if he makes some money, is super respectable. But nobody out in the market was willing to pay him what we ultimately offered him or what he was looking for. So $7.5 million is a big deal when you're talking about the scenario. If we bring this full circle back to, can you afford Clowney and Ngakoue? You can do it, but you probably can't do it without cutting Justin Britt, cutting KJ Wright, cutting DJ Fluker, and cutting Ed Dixon. We know Dixon's gone. Depending on who you ask, it might be worth it to move on from KJ Wright. I'm starting to lean that it might be worth it. I think it could be worth it. And I'm almost willing to say, it hurts to say this because KJ Wright's been such a great player, but I think for the future of this team, talking about turning the page, the next era of Seahawks, yeah, like get Barton over to the will and let KJ go. It hurts to say that, it does, but yeah, you're gonna have to cut all of those guys, and I just don't think that's when you like you said, you factor in for everybody you got to cut, and then you got to replace them, and you've got to reserve the money for free agency and all the other spots. That's not including the spots that we've already got to fill. I just think you're trying way too much to be able to afford these two luxuries, which are Yannick Ngakoue and Clowney. Now, I know I rambled on, but my true opinion is Clowney he's probably a little too expensive. It would be cool to have him back in the 18 to 20 million range. I think it would be cool to have him back. The issue is, like we've been saying in the previous episodes, you need more than him. And so what are you going to do after you get the big fish? And we've named the names. We don't need to go through them again, but I think Clowney is plan A. Yannick would be a contingency plan or a plan B, right? So I think with what's funny about the rumor that we heard from Tony Pauline was that he came out with the details. Usually, if it's just a rumor, you just hear, "Oh, this team is interested." But the fact that he got details like the round and the pick swapping, that tells me that. And Pauline's a trusted source. Like, this is a guy that in terms of rumors, like he's called a bunch of things in the past for Seattle. And I dabble in rumors. I don't know about you guys, but I like to dabble in rumors, probably a little bit too much. Anyways, the fact that he had the details tells me that I think Seattle is he's sorry, not he's. They are. John Schneider has a contingency plan if Clowney doesn't re-sign with Seattle, or if it takes too long in free agency, they've got a backup plan. There are positives. There are pros and cons of both players. I don't see them as technically equal. And I think they would rather have Clowney because you've already had him in-house. You know exactly how he fits in your locker room, in your scheme. If he's healthy and he doesn't have that core injury, can he replicate what he did in that Niners game? That's freakish, elite type pass rusher stuff. If he can bring that 4, 5, 6 games out of the year, then okay, it's worth it to pay that guy 18 to 20. If you're going to get another sub 5 sack season, even with the pressure rate, if he's not getting home, if he's going to be an injury concern, he's not worth that. And you would much rather go after a couple tier 2 guys and then double down in the draft, which I think they're going to go in the defensive heavy in the draft anyways. So I think Clowney is plan A. Yannick trade is probably a contingency plan if Clowney doesn't work out. And again, there is a scenario where you can have both, but you're cutting too many guys. You're creating too many additional voids to make that happen. I just don't see Seattle being that aggressive. They've never been that way in the past. I don't think they're going to do that now. Derek, you said Pauline is really well connected. Yeah, dude. He's got some really good connection. He's got some good birds. He's got some good birds, man. That's all I can say about him. He's been awesome. I really enjoyed when he was working for himself. He had his own draft site. I think now he's with Pro Football Network, so I think he's making some moves and doing a little bit more mainstream media. He was kind of an underground guy last year and a few years before, even though he's been around for a while. But now he's doing a little bit more of a mainstream thing. So I don't know. Maybe the rumors are still quality. He's getting it from a quality source. We need to consider, or we need to make room with the fact that now that he's working for a bigger media outlet, that he could be potentially getting smoked with these Nuggets. I'm not saying he is. I'm not inferring that he's getting bad information. I'm just saying we need to consider that. And that at the end of the day, it is just a rumor, right? So, but in my head, if it's true, if we go off the fact that he's getting good information, Clowney A, Yannick is B. And that's kind of where I'm at with it. So I don't think anything's changed, and you're not going to be able to afford both. The other thing about considering the cap in the future that I wanted to talk about was the players, right? It's not just the reserves. It's not just the rookie reserves. But when you spend so much money on a guy like Yannick and Clowney, when you're committing, it's going to be multi-years deals for both those guys at the top of the positional market. So $20 plus million for each of them. It's a lot of dough, guys. All of a sudden you've created such a tight situation that in 2021 you're going to have to consider extensions for, I think the big names are going to be Shaquille and Chris Carson. I love Chris Carson. At this point, I'm not paying that guy. It's not just that running back is devalued and that they're easily replaceable. We know that now. Analytics tells us that now. I'm still a pro run guy, but I totally agree with running backs themselves are super devalued. Don't draft them in round one. You can find replacements and don't pay them. Um, I'm all for letting Carson walk after this year, and I love that guy. I think he's been awesome, minus the injuries and the fumble issues. So the other thing, Shaquille Griffin, you need to like. There's a big gap, right? If he's at the floor, he's still he's above a $10 million a year player. But if Shaquille Griffin has a Pro Bowl season, in addition to what he just did in 2019, guys, he's going to be a $15 million corner. And that's an internal guy that you reward, right? If we're talking about John Schneider's way, that's a guy that you're going to pay. That wouldn't go into effect until 2021, but that's not far off, guys. That's not far off. And so you can't pay a bunch of guys in free agency this year to multi-year deals just because we think we have the money and forget about the future because we just want it all right now. Derek, you said agreed about the one or the either with Yannick Clowney. Need to rely on a bit of development for Green Collier. Totally agree, dude. And that's how the team feels. I guarantee you that, dude. I guarantee you. Just because the fans have already given up on Collier and Green, it doesn't mean anything. Like whoever says that to you, do not listen to them. They have absolutely. I don't mean to harp, really, I don't. But it's such a fan take to say Collier's a zero already, and we've seen Green for 2 years now, and yeah, he came on at the end of the year, but it's just not enough. We can't rely on them. Yeah, you can maybe not as a 3 down plus 50% snap guy, but high 40s, mid 40s, definitely. And they're going to put Collier on the field this year. I guarantee you that. He's going to be in 3-tech situations, which he was never at in college. He's going to line up. And for you guys that don't follow techniques, that's like interior, like the way that they use Sheldon Richardson in the past as a 3-tech pass rusher. You could see a guy like Collier with his body type doing a similar playing in a similar role situationally like that. Rasheem Green is still super young, guys. Like he's been in the league for a couple years now, but that guy was like 20 when we drafted him. Now, and the other thing is he's barely just getting like more reps. Like he's gonna come along. Trust me. Be patient. Maybe he's not an elite level pass rusher, but you're gonna get some production out of Rasheem Green. I totally believe that the team has to rely on the young guys that they already have in house. Don't give up on them just because, like I don't even blame Collier for last year. Like I blame, yeah, he had the injury, so he had a slow start, but you got to blame coaching for not putting him out on the field or not getting him ready to be on the field, right? That's part of the thing. It's not just because Collier was not ready. Like there's player responsibility and there's coach development and just scheme and usage, and he was underutilized in addition to being hurt. So Collier's going to grow. Rasheem Green's super young. He might be younger than Collier. Green I'm talking about. So he's just naturally maturing, growing, learning how to be a pro still. Like let's wait on those guys. I definitely think you've got to get a couple free agents. You've got to hit in the draft on a D end or an interior guy. We'll get into that. But definitely, dude, Collier and Green are going to be, 40% snap guys. Maybe not both of them, but I think Collier for sure. Sudo, you said, been out of the loop NFL-wise for a bit. Do you know if the new CBA will affect salary cap? This year, I don't think so. I think it will be next year, dude. So you're gonna want to, I'll link you. I'll hit you up after the stream, dude, and I'll send you some information on the CBA. It's first of all, it's still it's not finished. They haven't totally voted it in yet. We think it'll go through. But that'll be next year, and it will affect the salary cap. But I don't think it's going to be super significant. If anything, it'll make the salary cap bigger, I think. So, but don't quote me on that. There's a guy that I follow on Twitter. His name's John Gilbert. He's super smart in Seahawks Twitter about CBA and all that stuff. He follows all the super fine details that guys like me gloss over, important stuff. I'll link you to him, Travis. That way you can. He covers that stuff wonderfully. I've learned tons about John. I mentioned him last week too. Definitely worth a follow. Derek, you said it's also about expectations of first round picks. Fans expected too much when he was not considered a first round talent by most draft people. Yeah, I had him as like a day two guy as well. And that's just kind of Seattle's MO. I think especially with defensive linemen, they prioritize traits. They don't really care about, they do care about production and testing and interview and all that, but with defensive linemen, they're looking at traits and where they fit specifically up and down the defensive line of their defense. So the only argument you could make was, well, at TCU he only played on the edge, so now you're gonna slide him into 3-tech. He's never done that before. I think it's a good idea personally, but yeah, there's an argument to be made there that how did you figure this guy was a good fit for you on traits alone or film, college film alone, when he hasn't done that before, or not everything that you're going to ask him to do. That's part of pro coaching, man. So yeah, expectations from fans is, you got to be, I don't know, you got to be informed, but there's only so much the public knows, right? So let's see some of the other notes I want to talk about. Offense and free agency. Okay, so the first episode we were talking about offensive free agents, and before we got the news about the Bengals potentially franchise tagging AJ Green, he was like a guy that I really was about. Griff was definitely like a bunch of us wanted AJ Green as like wide receiver 3, but if they're gonna tag him, that's off the table. And I started thinking about it a little bit more, and I really don't think they're going to spend a lot of money in free agency on offense, let alone the wide receiver. I don't think they're going to used a high draft pick on a wide receiver, despite the fact that we had combine visits with like Jalen Reagor. Who are some of the other wide receivers that we had on there? We had a couple visits. We didn't even know all the visits they had. They had like 40. We might have got 15 names. So, there's a couple that they interviewed, but I don't think they're going to spend high. It's such a deep class of wide receivers. You might get a guy that was considered a day 2 dude in the mid round, 4th round this year. It's that deep. So I don't think they go early on wide receiver. I think they're going to rely on internal guys. Like Malik Turner's a restricted free agent, I think, or exclusive rights restricted free agent. He'll be back. I don't care what fans think about Malik Turner. The team loves him way more. He does all the things that you asked Jerron Brown to do, but for like, a third of the price, super cheap. And if you're a fan of John Ursua, you don't want to see too many guys coming in here to compete for wide receiver. You want less guys, so he's more likely to get wide receiver 3 or 4 is probably 4. And we'll see what happens with David Moore. If they offer him original round tender, he can stay or go, in my opinion. That's just kind of my feelings as of today on wide receiver. I've kind of shifted off from paying a wide receiver 3 or trading for a guy like that, and reverted back to I'm cool with the guys internally. I think Russell Wilson has enough weapons. Like, am I going to complain if we get another one? No, but I don't think it's a priority at all. Especially if your tight ends stay healthy and your running backs stay healthy. It's a big ask, right? But if they do, This team's got plenty of weapons, and Russell Wilson's elite. He elevates guys like, Malik Turner, John Ursua. Derek, you said, I think drafting a wide receiver on day 2 is the right move. Tap into a great class and let Ursua compete. They could do it. I would rather, because you only got 3 picks, right? That's more than the most teams. So if you spend 2 picks on defense and the third one's a wide receiver, am I gonna like lose sleep over it? Probably not. I probably won't. And most people would probably like to see something like that. I just don't think it's as big of a priority as some guys do. I know like you and other analytics guys really are into passing more, having more weapons, because we're in 11 personnel. That wide receiver 3 is more important than it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. That's true. I just don't know that you need Josh Gordon or somebody like that. Like Josh Gordon, I think that wasn't processed, right? That was something they backed into. That was an opportunity they found, and they got lucky to have him. Getting AJ Green on the cheap would have been savvy, but now as we're getting closer to free agency, we're seeing like, oh yeah, we're not going to be able to get some of these names like we thought we were. So like I said, if it's day 2, one of those second round picks or one of the thirds, right? So I misquoted earlier. If it's a third round pick, then great. I'm not losing sleep over that for sure. And you're right. That's where the meat of the draft is for all positions, but wide receiver especially. Like if you look here, I don't know if you guys can read these names. For me, my day 2 guys at wide receiver, Denzel Mims, who helped himself tremendously at the combine. His tape is good, but we wanted to see how he was going to test. He tested phenomenally. T. Higgins from Clemson, he's a late round 1 guy depending on who you ask. I've got him as a day 2 guy or a second rounder. The kid I really like is Brandon Ayuk from Arizona State. I think that dude is awesome. He kind of reminds me of a DJ Moore, a Stephon Diggs type. He might be a better returner than Jalen Reagor. I know that's maybe a hot take. Maybe it's not. I just think Ayuk is super good. I think he could be better than Higgins, Mims. He could be better than Judy. Depending on where he goes, right? A lot of this, all rookies, it depends on where they go. But for receivers, he lands in a good spot where he could potentially compete right away to be a slot guy and be a punt returner. I think he's going to be one of the better immediate impact guys. Chase Claypool maybe arguably out of the entire class, made himself the most money from the combine. His tape, he doesn't run that fast, as fast and as well as he tested at the combine. The tape tells you he doesn't play as fast as he tested. So I'll be curious to see where he ends up. But for now, I have him as a day 2 guy. Pittman Jr. from USC, KJ Hill, KJ Hamler, the kid from Minnesota, I think his name's Tyler Johnson, and Gabriel Davis, Central Florida. Those are my day 2 wide receivers. I'm sure I'm missing a couple, but the key names I would love to. If the Seahawks took Ayuk, dude, I'd be stoked. If he was available, I don't know where he's going to go. Probably the second round. If he somehow slipped to the bottom and one of those 2s was him, I'd be ecstatic. So maybe maybe what I said earlier is just hogwash. Anyways, so yeah, and this is kind of just a running mock that I have on the left here. You pay no mind to that. It's mocks are stupid, right? I just kind of use this as reference of like who's really a first rounder, and then I move names up and down. I just kind of do it for fun. I usually don't tweet that stuff out or give any of that stuff any credence. Let's see. Yeah, we kind of talked about pivoting from KJ and Fluker, um, getting back to roots, embracing younger players to take starting roles, even if they may not be quote unquote ready. Yeah, the three players that come to mind are Jamarco Jones, Cody Barton, who we spoke about a little bit, and then Marquise Blair. I think um, I think if you cut KJ Wright, that allows Barton to slide back over to the will, and that allows him to stay on the field even in nickel positions where you don't have three linebackers, you have an extra DB in, right? Barton stays on the field, gets those quality reps, and if he's the best pass coverage guy, that's where he really should be at will. And what else was I going to say? Jamarco Jones, if you cut DJ Fluker, I think you'd need to bring in some competition, right? But we saw what Jamarco Jones could do. We've seen a glimpse of Jordan Simmons. Your internal guys that are on the cheap right now, it might be a little bit risky, but those were the kinds of risks that they took when they first were building the LOB era. They weren't scared of playing guys that were a little bit raw, maybe out of position or switching positions from college. Like they took these risks and they just let it hang loose. I'm not saying it's going to work out the same way, but I think they need to get back to their roots and instead of like paying these, old guards these deals, and not Fluker, but like the Sweezies, the Upatis, they were great stopgaps, but it has to eventually get to a point where you have an internal guy that you've developed and gotten ready. Those two guys are Phil Haynes and Jamarco Jones. If those guys are your starting guards, I'm fine with it, honestly. I understand that we've got to protect Russell Wilson. I get all that. Right tackle's another situation entirely. But I think you've got to get back to um, letting the young guys play. So Barton, Jamarco Jones, and then Marquise Blair. If you can get him on the field, um, honestly, the only way you can right now is in big nickel situations where you've got Bradley McDougald sort of playing down in the box, closer to the line of scrimmage, and then and then Blair is your uh, strong safety in the back, as well as like dime packages. Um, those are the two situations where Blair is able to get on the field. And then in 2021, like we said in the previous episodes, you ideally want him to take over for Bradley as just like the full time starting strong safety. That's kind of where my thoughts are at with getting back to the roots, letting young guys play. Even we don't know who these young guys coming in on this draft class are going to be. Um, Even John Ursua, like get him out there, young guys. Let them. We need to embrace the next era, and I feel like these stopgap veterans, there's value in that, but then there's also a time where it's just like, man, we're just kicking the can down the road, Like, let's get the young guy in there and let him make his mistakes. Let him get his reps so he can learn from them. There's only so much you can benefit from watching film and taking mental reps. You need to do the physical part and make the mistakes to be able to correct them. And then watch the film and remember what you were doing physically. And that way you can apply the coaching and become better next time. Physical reps are absolutely critical, and they're not getting as much in practice either because you've got a couple days to rest, and then the starters have to get ramped up and get reps to prepare for the next team the next week. So backups don't get as many reps as you think, guys. It's not like, oh, they were practicing all year with second team, now they're ready to go, or they've gotten enough physical reps rather, so they're better now. No, it's part that, it's part taking your sophomore or third year leap, but most importantly is getting on the field. That's why, like, even though people talk crap about Trey Flowers, the team loves guys like that because he started all 32 games from the time he was a rookie. He started every game. That's low key like one of the most important things on a young guy's resume when he's coming up, hitting that third year where he's really learned how to be a pro and the game's slowing down. just the amount of experience a guy has before he's 24, 25 years old is super invaluable, super critical. So, yeah, I'll get off my soapbox on that. But I kind of just want to want to get back to playing younger guys, or giving them better opportunities to start. Um, in terms of how I see them drafting, we sort of mentioned it. I think it's going to be like super defensive heavy. Um, I think this team, in my mind, this offense rather, is more complete than people think. I think they could get by with an internal guy or a cheap free agent or a day two rookie, like you said, Derek, at wide receiver three. I think 4 and 5 are already in house for sure. I think running backs a very low priority ad. It's not a priority until 2021, in my opinion. Um, Tight end, they've addressed that. I think that's good, especially if they stay healthy. Offensive line, we can go left or right, but I think Brown will play out his contract. That's not a need probably until 2022. Phil Haynes, I've got a lot. I think he's a promising young guy. I could see him potentially being the just full blown incumbent starter from the day training camp opens up. Britt or Posick, in terms of the horizon center or guy that Posick or future guy that we get like in next year's draft or something, groom him. That's down the road. Center's down the road to me. It's not now. Right guard with Fluker, Jamarco Jones, and then right tackle. I think you could get George Fant back super cheap. I think Seattle values him way more than the league does. You let him test the market because he's earned that, right? This guy, he's never been able to show his full potential to the team. They had a lot of hopes in him, and they were going to roll him out as the starting left tackle, guys. If you remember that, before he busted up his knee the first time, he was going to be the starting left tackle. That says a lot about what they thought of George Fant. And he grinded back. He lost the weight and then put it back on. He slid over to the right side. He backed up Jermaine Ifedi, who I'm telling you right now, George Fant worked way harder than Jermaine Ifedi ever did. And he had a better attitude than Jermaine Ifedi ever did. I'm telling you that right now. No doubt about it. And then they had him as an extra offensive lineman or like a joker tight end. So this guy's been, pulled all around, asked to do all these kinds of things. He's rehabbed twice from injury. It's just like, you let that guy go and test the market and see if he can make as much money as if somebody's willing to overspend on him. You let him go and do that. My estimation is nobody's going to overspend for George Fant, or even give him a deal that his agent might think is out there, and he could come back for cheap. And I think you could probably start George Fant. You bring in competition, sure, or draft a young guy this year, but you could probably start George Fant at right tackle. And guys, the offense is complete. Like, right tackle really is the only true void. You can talk about upgrading at running back or hedging for injury plagued positions like running back or tight end. You can talk about adding another wide receiver, but really the only true void is right tackle. And we know the team values who they have in the house more than the fans do. I think they think this offense is more complete than how we're perceiving it. That's why I think they're just going to go super defensive heavy in this draft, and why they're not going to spend a bunch in free agency on offense. So I know I keep kind of repeating myself. I'm just kind of going over some notes I took, some talking points I wrote down. So sorry if I'm kind of just sort of like word souping this and rehashing old bullet points. So okay, defensive tackle. So we're focusing on pass rush, but low key, if Jaron Reed doesn't come back, guys, all of a sudden defensive tackle becomes like one of the top priorities because you have the current guys you have in house are Puna Ford, who's been awesome, but he's not a 3-down nose tackle, and he hasn't developed a pass rush yet. So uh, you can't say, oh, Puna Ford's the DT1 now. That's not realistic. And behind him is Nas Jones, who was a ghost all year. Behind him was DeMarcus Christmas, who was on injured reserve all year and a rookie. So he's pretty much a day 3 rookie again. He probably is, scrambling. He's going to be DeMarcus Christmas is going to be scrambling to make this team next year. That's who you have at defensive tackle if Jaron Reed doesn't re-sign. Defensive tackle is going to be something that gets addressed early on, I think, in this draft. It's not, in particular, a guy that can pass rush. It's not just, sorry, let me back that up. People are going to say, well, just get another Al Woods type. I agree, get another Al Woods type, but that's a run plugger. I'm talking about an interior pass rush. Now, we spoke about LJ Collier sliding in for a few reps, but you really need somebody like a Jaron Reed to provide a 3-down interior pass rush. So it would be nice to get Jaron Reed on a cheaper deal because of the suspension, the lack of sacks, and just having the down year. It would be nice to have him on like a 1-year prove-it deal. We'll see how that plans out. But if they don't get him back, I'm telling you guys, I wouldn't be surprised if they sign a couple edge rushers in free agency, and that first pick off the clock at 27 or wherever it ends up being is a defensive tackle. If we look at here, we're talking about Javon Kinlaw. I don't think he'll be there. Madubuike from Texas A&M, or a guy like Blaylock, who might be overdrafted at 27, but this is a guy that they met with at the Combine and did a formal interview with per Corbin Smith and a few of the other guys covering it. That's interesting to me that, a situation like that where it'd be like overdrafting another DCU defensive lineman who was a teammate of LJ Collier, so back-to-back going TCU D lineman there. And just the narrative of them like overdrafting on traits, right? It would be interesting to me if Blaylock was the selection late in the first round, or if they slid back early day 2 and got him. But at the same time, it's kind of like I said, it really just depends on Reed, but it's a low-key need. You need guys like, some of these are just run pluggers, but a guy like Madubuike, Blaylock, and Kinlaw, those 3 guys I think could be 3-down interior pass rusher types, not just run pluggers like your Tony McDaniels, Al Woods type guys that we've always been able to acquire for real cheap. I don't see that being an issue for them. So, so that's kind of one of the things I wanted to bring up because nobody really talks about defensive tackle. Everybody's just focused on Leos and 5-techs and edge rushers and nickel corners and wide receivers and skill players. But no, you've got to get interior. If you're going to, like we said in the past with Seattle, they've got to get pressure with 4 guys. They've got to get pressure on the quarterback without blitzing. You've got to have this is obvious, it goes without saying, but you've got to have a guy inside that can create pressure. Without Reed, it's not on this team. It's just not there, and you're not going to find it for cheap in free agency. Interior pass rushers are like the hardest things to find. They might not the hardest things to find, but they're one of the rarest like body types to find. And they don't get paid as much as the edge guys because they don't get as many sacks. But the traits, what it takes to be a guy that's like 300 plus pounds and be able to run under 5, run a 4.9, 4.8, 4.7 40 like Madubuike did, that's a rare athlete right there. If they could get somebody like that, That would really help this defense tremendously. It would be critical without Reed. So, um, in the event, so we'll go to linebacker. There's not a lot here, and that's the thing is I don't necessarily think it's a need now. But you lost Kendricks. You're probably not going to re-sign him. I don't know what's going on with his lawsuit or whatever. Um, but regardless of the lawsuit, I don't think he'll be back, even if he was free and clear. And in the event that you cut KJ Wright and move Barton over, all of a sudden your depth at linebacker that we thought we had figured out last year is gone. Um, and in addition, furthermore, Shaquem Griffin has now been taken out of the linebacker room, and he's become like a core special teamer and like a situational pass rusher. Like that's what he's doing now. He's not a stand-up linebacker anymore. So you've got BBK, Barton. In the event that KJ's gone, you've got BBK, Barton, Wagner, and who else? Is that it? Like, let me bring up my. Sorry, I should have had this. I should have had this open. Some guy named Sutton Smith, who's just a practice squad guy. That's your other linebacker you have under contract right now. So, whereas I wasn't thinking outside linebacker was that much of a need previously, in the event that KJ Wright goes out and Barton slides over, for sure, I could see them going as early as that third rounder because the shelf, the tiers of rookies, you could probably stopgap this with a veteran, right? You could slide Barton over here to the will. Um, and then your new Sam would be like a veteran. You could kick that can down the road and make it a future priority. You wouldn't necessarily have to spend like a day two pick on him, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did get another like stand up outside linebacker for like a 2021, 2022 type of trajectory. It wouldn't surprise me out because the depth's not here. Like I have Shaquem Griffin here, but he's really over here. Um, it's super light. There's nothing there. So linebacker a little bit more need. Those are the two things. So the outside linebacker and interior pass rush are things that I don't think get talked about enough on Twitter. And nickel corner is the other position I want to talk about because so I kind of mentioned I alluded to it in the last episode when JS was doing his presser at the combine, and some of the reporters were asking about base versus nickel. John was kind of like, trying to dance around the topic because he viewed nickel corner as a starting position in today's modern NFL, which is true with all the 11 personnel that teams deploy. Let's see, and then he like I said, he had to back off that and say, oh well, we didn't really do that because we ran a bunch of base. And then a reporter tried to infer, well, you ran base because you weren't comfortable with the nickel you had in house. And he wasn't going to throw the player under the bus, of course, but it was more than that. Like he was like, the way he answered it, the tone he used was sort of like, well, not necessarily. Like we've got a guy that we like, and I think who he was alluding to without naming names was Amadi. Amadi's that guy right now. Now you need to bring in competition. I think they probably draft a guy for sure. I don't know if it's necessarily an early priority or something you can address in free agency. I think you could do either. But again, if you bring somebody in, you're sort of like a veteran, like they did last year with Jamar Taylor. You're getting experience, which is valuable, but you're also preventing the young guy from getting those physical reps that we talked about being so important. So it would be cool to see Amadi just be able to take the reins and get that job and just hold on to it, right? Or at least a rookie come in from this class, grab the reins and hold it. I don't want to see a Jamar Taylor in there. I don't want to see a 1 year veteran who is going to play middle of the road and then is going to be a free agent next year. We got to have this discussion again next year. We need a good nickel corner because the offenses in the NFL today are just, they're stacked. Like, the playoff offenses are stacked. You need to have a good nickel defense. And, you know, I don't know more about defense than Pete Carroll, but I definitely think that you're going to see way more nickel this year. I think they learned a lot about, the experiment they did with base first nickel this year. And you're going to go back to seeing more nickel, more big nickel, more dime. I think you're going to see a lot more of that this year. And that starts with bringing in some competition or giving Amadi the opportunity to take that job, even if he's not quite ready, even if he's maybe not necessarily better on day one than the veteran you bring in, or the veteran that you theoretically bring in. Go with the younger guy. Let them make the mistakes. Let them grow. Let them develop. That's a part of the plan. Some of the corners that fall into the nickel range that I have here, I've got names here, but it's hard to infer like who's going to be inside or outside other than like what they did in college and like their size, right? We know the thresholds for outside corner are pretty strict with arm length and height. We know 6 foot, 32-inch arms is kind of like the minimum on the outside, but inside, as other people have mentioned, they're a little bit more lenient with the arm length thing and the height thing as well. We've had guys with like Amadi is that way. He's not the prototype. He's not the physical prototype that you would see on the outside for Seattle. The kid from Auburn, I'm not even going to try and butcher his name out of respect for him. There's a kid in Auburn and that projects as a pretty good nickel, and then he's also a kick returner. So I had this asterisk. I don't have asterisks next to all the kick returners here, but I will fill this in, and this will be more complete. It's incomplete right now, but I did make note that he was a kick returner. So I gave him a little bump for that. And then the kid at UCLA, I think his name's Dante Holmes. I might be getting the first name wrong there. He's another guy. Mudia from Iowa, another one. Brian Hall I think is more of an outside guy, but he's noteworthy because he was on a formal invite with Seattle over the combine, as well as the kid Fulton from LSU, who's probably more in the nickel role. But I think Fulton's a day one guy, and I just don't see them taking a day one corner. That's just never been their MO, right? They're fine with traits, and they want to see physical things and traits, and they can mold it. Like they molded Sherm, they molded Trey. There's just, I think they count on their development with corner rather than spending high draft capital on the top college prospects. Fulton is, to me, a first-round guy. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's an early day 2 guy. I just thought the way he tested helped him. For me, it ascended him into the round 1 territory, which he would be a late round 1 guy where they're picking. So you could make the argument that, that he's a potential guy. I'm not saying he's not. I just think they're going to go defensive line heavy early on because I think there's some, just like wide receiver here, I think there's a lot of day 2 potential with corners. So, like, there's a lot of day 2 names. So it's not something that's high priority to me. Similar, Derek, to the wide receiver situation. I just think you can wait on it. It's a little bit thicker, and the meat of that position, the shelves, the tiers, right, that we talk about every year with the draft. That's in day 2 for corner for me. The positions that you want to go early on, if you're not a quarterback needy team or a left tackle needy team, because there's some killers at the top here. If you're a tackle, this is a great year if you need tackle. Even this Jones kid at Houston, who I have at early day 2, he could slide in round 1. Shoot, the kid from USC, Austin Jackson, could be a round 1 guy. Trey Adams, he's not going to be a round 1 guy, but he was, before the injuries, he was like projected by a few people last year as like the top offensive tackle coming out. And then he had to stay another year because of the injury. But he was highly projected before that. Ezra Cleveland had a great combine. Some of the like draft nicks are saying this guy's not going to get out of day 2 now. Helped himself out tremendously. So if you need tackle, this is a great year. If you're not a quarterback needy team, you're not a tackle needy team, this linebacker is the one that's super thin, right? That would be, I haven't filled out more names, but these are just really the only day 1, day 2 names that I think are there for inside and outside linebackers. And Simmons, the guy who like killed the combine, you don't even have a firm position for that guy. He could be a safety. So some team might look at him and want to play him at defensive back. You don't know. So I think he fits in a linebacker situation, but I think linebacker is thin. If you need linebacker, you're going to have to prioritize that early on. For Seattle, I think you still are looking at a guy like Gross Matos, Zach Bond, day 2 guys, Aquara, Uke, Zuniga from Florida. Those are some guys that I would. And Bradley Anai was a combine, formal interview for them. So there's some day 2 guys there that I could see them doubling down after free agency on edge, and then like I said, depending on what happens with Jay Reed, a Blaylock, a Matabwike, a Gallimore who tested really well and as a day 2 defensive tackle. These are the kinds of guys that I could see Seattle taking with their first couple of selections. It's going to be a great year, guys. Like, I think this is a pretty decent draft class. For the first time in a while, we've got decent draft capital. We've got a decent amount of cap to play with. I think the only other thing I really wanted to mention was pro days. There are certain guys that didn't do testing because of injury or because they just don't like the combine timing of the way they did it this year. You need to pay attention to, if you're interested in this at all, that is, so some of the pro day dates and Seattle's presence when they send scouts to some of these pro days. Start making a mental note of like, okay, they sent scouts to who are the key names that we should be paying attention to at these schools. Those are great indicators. When you start to get closer to the draft, you're going to combine the rumors that you've heard with the combine interviews, with the pro day presences, with the tests and the tape, and looking at guys and saying who fits like the Seahawk mold, and you're going to get a way better idea of like shortening that list, because there's going to be 250 players drafted, but when you hear John Schneider at his press conference say we start with 150 names on our board, and then it drops to about 100, you're talking about a third of the guys that are drafted only being like draftable to Seattle. And it's not just the top guys. It goes well into day 3 and priority free agency. So like there's a ton of names on here that are going to go in day 3 that I don't have here that are super relevant to Seattle. I don't like to spend super crazy amounts of time trying to learn every single name that's going to go in the draft. I like to identify guys that I think are going to go between rounds 1 and 3, the top 100. If because once day 3 comes around, I feel like teams are just really, they're just, for the most part, maybe not round 4, but like 5, 6, 7. It's just dart throws. Like, I'm not saying you're guessing, but you're not really banking on these guys. You can't really bank on any of them, right? But there are certain profiles that just, when you combine everything, like I said before, they just stand out as a day 1 or day 2 guy. That's where I like to focus my attention. Otherwise, I'll be obsessing over all the names like some of the draftniks love to do. I used to be like that. I'm not anymore. And then when draft day comes, you're just like, all that research I did was like worthless, because Seattle's just going to take guys I don't even have on my radar anyway, right? It's so funny how that works out. Trying to find late round gems from Seattle. Oh yeah, the good old days. I'm not going to waste my time on that anymore. And it's just kind of boring too in this format to talk about those super deep sleepers. Like, you're talking about some really neckbeard type stuff for draftniks and people aren't interested. The draft's great, right? But the casual fan does not pay attention past the first 3 rounds, to be honest. So it's all good though. So yeah, man, I'm excited. The next few weeks are just going to be hellacious in terms of NFL news, in terms of free agency. We're going to learn a lot about the future of this team in the next couple of weeks, guys. So it's exciting times. Pay attention to those pro days. We'll see you around free agency time. I'm probably going to maybe do one more episode before free agency opens. I'm not sure. I might just wait until, day 1 or day 2 of free agency passes. That way we have something a little bit more concrete to talk about, instead of just speculating like, oh, is it going to be Yannick or Clowney, or are we going to get Robert Quinn or Vic Beasley? Name every single name. And then, when we finally sign a guy, say, oh yeah, I had that name a couple months ago, like we had some insight or something. Like, at this point, we just are so in desperate need in all kinds of phases on defense, and I'm just giddy to see what they do with the resources. So it's fun times. I appreciate everybody stopping in. One I wanted to mention, I am going to do an Amazon gift card giveaway at the end of this month. I'm running it to the end of this month. It's going to be a $150 Amazon gift card. All you got to do is follow this channel or my YouTube page, and then retweet, if you're on Twitter, retweet the pinned tweet that I put up today regarding the gift card. That'll qualify you, and then we'll do some sort of like random drawing at the end of the month. I don't know how I'm going to do it yet, but that's how you qualify. I'm just trying to get a little bit of growth on the page, and then give back to the community. I'm stoked for building something here that's kind of just casual, not structured. We can just chat. I'm hoping more people show up. I appreciate you, Travis, for stopping by. Derek, you've been in here pretty much every episode. Hopefully we get a few more people in. I'd love to be able to have like, a dozen people. I don't even know. Maybe that's too much. But I'd love to be able to just chat here and just do something a little bit differently than, like I said, some of the other blogs have been doing. I'm still writing for Beast Pod. That's not going to change. But I'm kind of doing just like a solo thing, sort of like Griffin has done with Maddie, with Seattle Overload. Really love their podcast. Definitely follow them and that podcast if you're into X's and O's. They're the best in our circle, to be honest. There's no one better than them at breaking down the X's and O's than them. And then probably more written articles on Beast Pod as we get closer to training camp. I usually do like a projected 53-man roster when we get into training camp. I plan on going to training camp this year. That's a little far out, but the whole point I wanted to say is I'm not done with Beast Pod. Definitely going to be doing more written articles if that's your type of thing too. So appreciate you guys stopping by. Derek said exciting weeks ahead. Thanks for doing this again. Have a good weekend, dude. You too, man. Hopefully it's not too too quick, and stay healthy, man. Stay clean from the corona. I know it's been sort of a meme and a lighthearted joking, but it seems like it's something to also just be safe, man. That's all I'll say on that note. But yeah, man, appreciate you guys stopping by. Looking forward to doing the next episode here in the next couple weeks or so. So, all right, boys, we'll talk to you later. Peace.